For more, let's go to Nigeria's capital and Seun Bakare, programs manager for Amnesty International. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
It is my pleasure. Thank you.
We've heard so many conflicting reports of what happened at Lekki Tollgate in Lagos on Tuesday. What have you pieced together?
Amnesty International carried out an on-the-ground investigation, and our investigation revealed that men of the Nigerian army and the police actually killed at least 12 peaceful protesters yesterday, both at the toll gate and in Alausa Ikeja, where thousands of protesters have been protesting police brutality as part of the NSAS movement. We gathered evidence from eyewitnesses, from video footage, and from hospital reports, and all of this point to the fact that between 6:45 p.m. and 9 p.m. yesterday, the Nigerian military actually opened fire on hundreds of people who were peacefully calling for good governance and an end to police brutality. So these are some of the things that we have found.
And we're seeing eyewitness accounts that the lights at the toll gate went off mysteriously just before, and that protesters were penned into an area where they couldn't get out?
Yes, we also received those reports, and then we were able to confirm that shortly before the shootings, CCTV cameras at the Lekki toll gate, where the protesters had gathered, were actually removed by persons who claimed that they were working for government officials, and electricity was also was cut, which to us signify a clear attempt to actually hide evidence. And these reports that we received, we also tried to corroborate from different sources, and we found that these events actually took place, and the CCTV cameras were actually removed before the attacks against protesters later in the day.
Nigerian army earlier stating that no soldiers were at the scene. Your reaction?
Well, I've mentioned earlier that even from video evidence alone, it was obvious that men of the Nigerian army were at the scene, and they were the ones who released fire on these protesters. It is difficult to fight evidence. You could make claims as much as you want, but when the evidence speaks contrary to the claims you are making, then someone is lying.
Right, the connection dipping out a little bit. I hope it's restored okay now.
Is there?
Yeah, now it's fine. Seun Bakare.
I can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Good. Seun Bakare, how do you explain it? Because there had been earlier in the day at least one deadly incident in Lagos. How do you explain the fact that, from what you're describing, it was an orchestrated killing of unarmed civilians? Why?
It is difficult to explain why, but because I think the right people who should give that explanation will be the authorities. But what we are saying is that this fits into a pattern, and that pattern is blatant disregard for right to life of people who are protesting as a result of police brutality. So we find it very difficult to explain how authorities will then, in policing and trying to quell such a protest that arose out of police brutality, will then begin to use excessive force to address the same problems that brought about this protest in the first place. It's difficult. It's mind-blowing. It's completely difficult to explain these things. But as I said again, it is the people in authority who can give a response as to why they did what we say they have done.
Because the beef with protesters these last 13 days has been with the police, and most notably that notorious plainclothes unit, SARS. Why the army in this case?
I know that a day before the army came on the streets, they had released a statement saying that Operation Crocodile Smile was going to start all across the country. And when we saw the notice from the Nigerian army, we suspected strongly that this was a ploy to actually use the soldiers to quell the protest. But of course, many media houses began to suggest that, and the army came out to say, no, this is not the situation. Operation Crocodile Smile is a routine exercise. But then it turned out that that operation may have been activated at this time just as a response to the protest. And it's not the first time that we have seen men of the Nigerian army being used to quell protest in this country. We've seen it in different parts of the country in the past, so it's not something that is completely new. The only angle to this now is that when people are protesting against excessive use of force, and then you bring soldiers who are known to violate rights equally as the police, then the question is, are the authorities willing to answer or give in to the demands of these protesters? And broadly speaking, are the authorities really willing to stop security forces from using excessive forces? Not just the police, but also other units of the security forces. The question is, will the authorities be willing to follow through with its commitment to ensure that the police, for example, no longer use excessive force against the people that they are supposed to be policing? The question is, will the Nigerian authorities be willing to ensure that the Nigerian army and all other units of our security forces also comply with Nigeria's international human rights treaties? These are the questions that are begging for answers.
Just very briefly, because we're running late, Seun Bakare, the President Muhammadu Buhari, appealing for understanding and calm earlier. He didn't specifically mention what happened at Lekki Toll Plaza. What would you like to hear him say?
I think what all Nigerians would like to hear the president say is, beyond asking for calm, because we are also asking for calm, it is that we want him to give commitments, and beyond commitments, because in the past we've seen commitments that yielded nothing. We want the president to also go ahead and put measures in place to start reforming the police. This was what started the protest in the first place. Nigerians are saying that we have had many failed promises to reform the police, and nothing has happened in the past. So beyond giving us empty words, we want to see actions, and we want to see actions as quickly as possible. So these actions are what we are waiting to see. And because people have not seen actions, it explains why the protesters have remained on the street for so long. So actions is what people want to see. Genuine reforms within the police that caters to the needs of the Nigerian people, and that also answers all of these human rights violations that we have been talking about.
Seun Bakare of Amnesty International, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.